Sun Devil fans heading home unhappy tonight. 25-18 was the score as the Sun Devils dropped to 0-2 on the season following a loss to the Bruins. Zach Keenan here for DevilsDigest.com with me, our publisher, Hode Rubino. Hode, on paper, this seems like a game that the Sun Devils could have won. Jaden Daniels went 21 for 35, touchdown, 225 yards, great rushing performance from Diamante Trainum. What went wrong here that we didn't see on paper?
Well, I just think that ultimately we talked about, are we going to see a team in ASU not playing for 3 weeks, really, I guess 4 weeks you want to call it, coming into tonight. Is it going to be really that much rust to knock off? How sloppy would it be? I mean, sure, we expected those elements to showcase themselves. Unfortunately for the Sun Devils, they really showcased themselves in spades, maybe even a little more than a lot of us did expect. You're looking at 12 penalties for 83 yards, and it's not only the sheer volume of the penalties, but really a handful or so of those penalties prevented a handful or so of first downs, including one of them a touchdown being called back, including a 2-point conversion that was not converted. Illegal man downfield, one of the, I would say, more rare calls in football. ASU was flagged, I believe, at least 3 times for that penalty. We saw Jaden Daniels throw an interception in the end zone in double coverage. We saw Jaden Daniels fumble on the 1 yard line. Those are just mishaps that ASU could not afford on a night where the defense definitely did not have its best performance at all in the first half, giving up 17 points. But I did ask Herm Edwards, how many games have you been involved in your decades of coaching where your defense gave up only 8 points in the entire second half and you still came out on a losing end? Even Herm Edwards said, I haven't been in too many games like that. Granted, the 8 points came very late in the fourth quarter in the most opportune timing for the Bruins. But ultimately, when your defense plays as well as it does in the second half, you do expect the offense to come through and support it. That simply was not there tonight. You could say really a cruel deja vu from the USC game where we saw a lot of those trends too. And here we are with the Sun Devils 0-2 in this weird 2020 season.
Yeah, weird 2020 season is right. 0-2 is not the record anyone expected, but for tonight's game, a real tale of two halves, to be honest, Hode. We saw a Sun Devil team that was a 49-yard field goal away from walking out 17-0 going out of the half, so they ended up going to the locker room 17-3, and it looked like a different team came out. I don't know what fire was lit under them by Coach Herm Edwards, but they came out and played lights out in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter ended up taking a 1-point lead for that 18-17. It didn't hold that way, but what are some of the adjustments that the team made in the second half that allowed them to make that jump in the third quarter especially?
I would say in the second half, when we look at the offense, I think that the running game definitely improved a lot. I mean, the blocking schemes that Arizona State employed in the first half obviously were not effective, but in the second half, when you look at Chip Trainum rushing for 90 yards just in the second half alone, that obviously took a lot of pressure off of the passing game. And I know you and I talked in the preview about, can these young receivers, now that they have one game under the belt, really show up? And then I thought Johnny Wilson really more than anything. I mean, obviously disappointing game in the season opener against the Trojans, and tonight we definitely saw a different Johnny Wilson. Johnny Wilson we probably all expected to see. We saw a healthy Frank Darby, and he obviously showed up too, so scored a touchdown. We saw the tight ends being involved in the passing game. Curtis Hodges had 2 receptions. We saw a really nice trick play where wide receiver Ricky Purcell connected on a 52 yard pass to Rashad White. Andre Johnson, a player that we really thought in the preseason were really going to break out this year, had a long passing play too. So a lot of different wide receivers got involved. Some of them, truthfully, in the first half, but I just feel the second half, we knew that once the Arizona State's running game is really going to start clicking on all cylinders, that is really going to open up everything else. But I just feel that those real costly turnovers for Arizona State in the second half is really also what held the offensive back from coming up on top. And we really wondering how the defense was going to come out, especially in the beginning of the second half when UCLA was receiving the second half kickoff. Because let's face it, even though ASU was able to kick that 49-yard field goal right before halftime, all the momentum was on UCLA's side, and UCLA basically goes punt, safety, intentional grounding by DTR in the end zone, another punt. UCLA did not have a drive longer than 26 yards until they had that drive for the go-ahead touchdown. And look, I don't mean to pit the defense against the offense, but ultimately, when your defense gives up only 8 points in the second half, this team deserves to win. And like I said, the offensive support, unfortunately, much like the USC game, simply was not there for the Sun Devils.
And Hood, I want to ask about a couple of the defensive players because defense, again, on paper, looked very good. Merlin Robertson, 7 tackles. Tyler Johnson, 6 tackles, 3 sacks. DJ Davidson, at least 1 sack to his name. But where was the disconnect here? Because these numbers look great, but the score doesn't.
Well, the defense, as well as it played in the second half, really did not play as well in the first half. Now, again, not to keep on beating that drum, but I'm a big believer, and I thought the USC game showed that, and the UCLA game showed it again, that when the offense really doesn't support the defense, it does have its breaking points. Now, I thought the defense, compared to the USC game, maybe gave up bigger yardage plays compared to that game. And granted, against USC, you had 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, both of them on fourth down conversions. I'm not trying to minimize that, but I just didn't see USC some 4 weeks ago really busting out plays for 25 yards, 30-some yards, 40-some yards. And UCLA was really able to do that, and I think just it's an absolute mental backbreaker for the ASU defense. But again, give this unit credit; they did all the right halftime adjustments. I thought that defensive line, especially in the second half, harassed DTR, was in that Bruin backfield time and time again. Really disrupted the UCLA offense, but ultimately, if the offense is not giving you that much support, again, I just think that every defense has its breaking point, and for ASU, it really came with about 4 minutes, 26 seconds on the clock, where UCLA went on their only productive drive of the entire second half. But because ASU wasn't really able to light up the scoreboard by any means, that was just enough for UCLA to escape over here with the win.
And I wanted to keep talking about the defense for a moment. Demetric Felton, number 10 for the UCLA redshirt senior running back, who's had a stellar season so far, really making a case for MVP of the conference. He was not too loud tonight. We expected him, and in pre-game previews from coaches, they all said that number 10 would be a player, absolutely an impact player, but he seemed to come up quiet tonight, Hode.
Yeah, Demetric Felton did not start the game. I guess, for people like us that don't follow really UCLA closely, that was somewhat of a surprise. But when we look at the rushing totals, Demetric Felton only had 41 yards rushing. I think a lot of ASU coaches would love to see that number ahead of time, thinking, okay, this means ASU is going to win the game. But his replacement Brown, 94 yards rushing, and DTR, the quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson himself. We talked about it in the preview that ASU would probably rather see Chase Griffin at quarterback for UCLA because he is not even close to being the rushing threat that DTR is. And even though DTR only had 49 yards, which I think is still a healthy number for the quarterback, I think a lot of those rushes really resulted in first downs, and really just makes the defense try to be accountable for him, which obviously by default would open up the playbook for other running backs like Brown to shine, and obviously also for the wide receivers to really showcase their skills. DTR had, I believe, 192 yards passing. Again, probably a number that pregame you would gladly sign off on it because you think, okay, ASU defense was really able to contain the UCLA offense. In the second half, they were really able to do that. But I don't mean to put this loss on the defense at all because, again, the way they played the second half, ASU deserved to win. The first half was definitely a forgettable performance for the Arizona State defense and put just big enough of a hole that the ASU offense on a very lukewarm night. Was not able really to dig itself out of, but. I think you come away from this game just like the USC game. A loss is a loss. There's no moral victories, but this ASU defense still showing, just like we thought in the preseason, this definitely is the strength of the team. It definitely is one of the stronger units, I think, in the entire Pac-12 conference. Unfortunately, on the stat sheet, and more importantly, on the win-loss column, they really don't have much to show. And I understand people would really point to that more than anything else. But this ASU defense really is a special unit, and really probably deserves to have a better win-loss record overall for the team than they have right now.
Yeah, 0-2 right now. It doesn't do a great job depicting what this team has done and looked like so far just in 2 games this season. Hode, my last question before I run out to my car and turn the heat up to 10 and get out of this Tempe evening is what needs to change? Because next week is tentatively the final game of the season for the Sun Devils. We've heard some good things from Tempe about scheduling 2 additional games, but right now on the schedule, this game, this Territorial Cup in Tucson next Friday night, is the last game of the season. What needs to change if the Sun Devils want to get at least 1 win out of this year?
Well, this game is definitely a game of misery loves company, because U of A is entering the Territorial Cup with the 4th worst losing streak in all FFBS, 11 games lost in a row. So Arizona State is meeting a team, arch rival and all, that's in the dumps themselves. Obviously playing more games than Arizona State, so maybe it stings more, stings less. I guess maybe that's in the eye of the beholder. But a team that is going to be plenty motivated to stop that awful streak they're on right now, and what better motivation to do that against your hated in-state rival. So. I mean, for Arizona State, again, I think much like the USC game, there are some positives to take away from this, but everything really has to be buttoned up. So really, I think what it comes down to is, what are the positive lessons you can take away from this game? Again, I'm not saying this is a moral victory. The USC loss wasn't a moral victory either, but the defense definitely has some positive to take away from this. The ASU offense, even though it didn't play lights out in the second half, definitely was able to make the right adjustments at halftime to come out and put a better performance in the last 2 quarters, especially in the running game. So maybe, just maybe, that Territorial Cup can be a game where both the ASU offense and the ASU defense are able to just really be clicking on all cylinders, or at least pretty darn close to that, from the opening kickoff, and really turn in both on both sides of the ball a strong performance in the first half. If they can do that against U of A, I think they can finally get into that coveted win column in this bizarre season. But, again, I just think you just have to take this game for what it is. A team came off after a long layoff. The turnovers showed that. The penalties show that. The struggles, digging yourself a big hole, showed that. So I'm not saying it's a comforting thought for Sun Devil fans right now, but I just feel that this pandemic has dealt a lot of people a lot of bad hands. Obviously, sports, you really put that in perspective compared to what goes on around us. But in terms of Arizona State, it's just been one obstacle, one more adversity measure after another, and sometimes those measures are just impossible to get out of. But like Herman Edwards said in the post game, maybe now Arizona State, now that they get to, fingers crossed, play 2 games in 2 weeks, maybe they get into that rhythm, maybe they get into that flow, that we get to see a smoother performance on both sides of the ball from the Sun Devils. If that happens, I think that Arizona State can come out victorious in the Territorial Cup. But really, nothing is a given, and there's definitely a lot to clean up after this game, much more like it was after the USC game. We'll see if the Sun Devils can really do that successfully and effectively.
Well, it's after midnight, which I believe it means the start of Hate Week. Arizona State and Arizona this week, coming up on Friday. For all your pre, post, and during content, make sure to keep it locked in to DevilsDigest.com and give us a follow on Twitter at Devils Digest. For Hode Rubino, I'm Zach Keenan. The Sun Devils dropped to 0-2 this season following a 25-18 loss to UCLA. They'll look to rebound next Friday.